I'm Jessica, 34, and I never expected to open my front door and find my entire life in shambles. There stood my sister Amber, paintbrush in hand, surrounded by demolished walls and exposed wiring in what used to be my pristine living room. The home I'd worked so hard for, my sanctuary, was unrecognizable. The look on her face shifted from pride to panic when she saw me, and in that moment, I knew this unauthorized renovation would expose cracks in our relationship deeper than those now running through my plaster walls. If you've ever had a family member completely overstep their boundaries, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like button. You might want to subscribe too, because this story about sisterhood and betrayal gets much more complicated. To understand the magnitude of what happened, you need to know a few things about me. I'm what most would call a planner, meticulous, organized, with a 5-year strategy for every aspect of my life. That's partly why I've risen to senior marketing executive at my firm. 3 years ago, after a particularly successful campaign landed me a substantial bonus, I fulfilled my biggest dream, buying my own home. Not just any home, but a 1920s craftsman bungalow with original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, and a charm you simply can't find in newer constructions. That house represented everything I'd worked for since college, every late night at the office, every sacrificed vacation, every penny saved. I'd spent countless weekends carefully selecting period-appropriate fixtures, hunting through antique stores for the perfect doorknobs, and painstakingly stripping decades of paint from the woodwork. The house wasn't just where I lived, it was an extension of me. The business trip to Seattle was supposed to last 2 weeks. Our agency was pitching to a major tech company, and as the recently promoted team lead, I couldn't afford any mistakes. The presentation materials needed to be perfect, the strategy airtight. I'd been preparing for months, knowing this client could essentially double our agency's revenue. The pressure was enormous. Before leaving, I'd done what I always do when traveling, asked my sister Amber to check on my house. At 30, Amber is everything I'm not: spontaneous, creative, and perpetually living paycheck to paycheck. Where I see risk, she sees adventure. While I was climbing the corporate ladder, she was bouncing between jobs in graphic design, interior decorating, and most recently, as an assistant to an up-and-coming home renovation show host. The contrast between us wasn't accidental but forged in the crucible of our childhood. Our parents' divorce when I was 12 and Amber was 8 shaped us differently. I responded by becoming ultra-responsible, believing that if I could just control everything perfectly, I could prevent further chaos. Amber went the opposite direction, developing a life's too short mentality and refusing to be tied down by plans or commitments. I became the responsible daughter our mother relied on. Amber became the free spirit who brought joy and creativity into our fractured home. Despite our differences, we'd always been close. I admired her creativity and passion, she respected my stability and success. We had an unspoken arrangement: I'd help her through financial rough patches, and she'd inject spontaneity into my otherwise predictable life. It worked for us, mostly. When I handed Amber my spare key the day before my trip, I'd given her specific instructions: water the plants on Tuesday and Friday, bring in the mail, and make sure the security system was armed when she left. She'd nodded enthusiastically, as always. In retrospect, perhaps too enthusiastically. "Don't worry about a thing, Jess," she'd said, pocketing my key. "Your house will be fine. Better than fine." I'd been too preoccupied with my presentation to notice the gleam in her eye. The truth was, in the months leading up to my trip, I'd been talking about making some changes to the house. Nothing major: updating the kitchen backsplash, perhaps repainting the guest bedroom, maybe finally tackling the overgrown backyard. I'd even created a Pinterest board titled Someday Projects. But between my promotion, the increasing demands at work, and the Seattle pitch, those plans had been indefinitely postponed. What I didn't know was that Amber had recently lost her job at the renovation show. The series hadn't been renewed for another season, leaving the entire crew unemployed with little notice. She hadn't told me, probably because she knew I'd launch into my usual speech about financial responsibility and having a backup plan. And she definitely hadn't mentioned that she'd been dating one of the show's contractors, a guy named Ryan, for the past few months. These pieces of information might have been helpful to have before I handed over my house key. But hindsight, as they say, is 20/20. The Seattle presentation was scheduled for the end of the 2-week period. When the client unexpectedly moved it up by a week due to their CEO's travel schedule, I was actually relieved. The pitch went brilliantly, we knocked it out of the park, and I was able to book an earlier flight home. I didn't tell anyone I was coming back early. I figured I'd surprise my friends, catch up on sleep in my own bed, and enjoy some quiet time in my peaceful home before returning to the office. The moment I put my key in the lock, I knew something was wrong. There was a fine layer of dust on the doorknob, and I could hear unfamiliar voices and what sounded like a power tool coming from inside. My first thought was burglars, and I nearly called 911 before I recognized Amber's laugh cutting through the noise. When I pushed open the door, the sight that greeted me was worse than any burglary I could have imagined. My entire living room had been gutted. The carefully restored wainscoting I'd spent 3 weekends perfecting was gone. The vintage wallpaper had been stripped. Electrical wires hung exposed from holes in the ceiling where my antique light fixtures had once been. The hardwood floor was covered with drop cloths splattered with paint and plaster dust. And there in the middle of it all stood Amber, wearing paint-splattered overalls, her hair tied back in a bandana, looking for all the world like she was having the time of her life. "Amber," I gasped, my voice barely audible over the whine of what I now recognized as a circular saw coming from the direction of my kitchen. "What the hell is going on?" She whirled around, her expression morphing from concentration to shock to childlike excitement in the span of seconds. "Jessica. Oh my God, you're back early." She dropped her paintbrush and rushed toward me, arms outstretched as if for a hug. I stepped back, my hands up defensively. "What have you done to my house?" My voice was trembling now, shock giving way to fury. "Surprise." Amber's smile faltered slightly at my tone. "I know you've been wanting to renovate for ages, but you've been so busy." "So I thought." "You thought what?" I cut her off, moving further into the chaos that had once been my living room. "That you'd demolish my house without asking me?" "Not demolish, update. Modernize. Open it up." She gestured expansively at the space. The layout was so closed off before. "Now look at the light flow. And wait until you see what we're doing in the kitchen." "We? Who's we?" As if on cue, the saw in the kitchen stopped, and a tall man with a tool belt slung low on his hips appeared in the doorway that, if memory served, used to contain a wall. "Hey, you must be Jessica," he said with an easy smile, wiping his dusty hands on his jeans before extending one to me. "I'm Ryan. Amber's told me so much about you." I ignored his outstretched hand, turning back to my sister. "Amber, I need you to explain exactly what's happening here. Right now." Amber's excitement was undimmed. "Okay, so remember how you've been talking forever about wanting to update the kitchen and maybe knock out a wall or two to make the space more open concept? Well, when you left for your trip, I got to thinking about how stressed you've been lately and how you never have time to do the things you want to do for yourself. And then it hit me, what if I did it for you? As a surprise." "A surprise," I repeated flatly. "Yes. I have all these connections from working on the show, and Ryan here is an amazing contractor. We've been wanting to try out some of the techniques we learned, and I thought, what better canvas than your house? You're always saying it needs updating." "Refreshing," I corrected automatically. I said it needed refreshing. "Not gutting." Ryan stepped forward. "The bones of this place are incredible. Houses like this were built to last, but they need some modernization to make them functional for today's lifestyle. We're really just enhancing what's already here." I walked further into the house, my horror growing with each step. The archway between the living room and dining room had been widened to nearly twice its original size. The built-in china cabinet that had sold me on the house was completely gone. In the kitchen, all the cabinets had been removed, and the vintage tile countertops I'd meticulously restored were nowhere to be seen. "Where are my cabinets?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Oh, we're donating those to the restore, Amber said cheerfully. They were so dated, Jess. We're putting in these gorgeous open shelving units instead. Very now. I continued my inspection in stunned silence, moving from the kitchen to the hallway to the bathroom. The clawfoot tub I'd refinished myself had been disconnected, sitting at an odd angle in the middle of the room. The hexagonal floor tiles, original to the house, had been partially removed, leaving jagged edges where the demo had apparently been interrupted. How long has this been going on? I finally managed. We started the day after you left, Amber beamed. We've been working non-stop. I used all my savings from the show to buy materials. It's my gift to you. Your gift, I repeated numbly. Then something occurred to me. Do you have permits for any of this work? Ryan and Amber exchanged a quick glance. Well, not exactly, Ryan admitted. But I know what I'm doing. I've been on dozens of renovation projects. As an assistant, I guessed. His slight flush confirmed it. Look, Amber jumped in, we can get the permits retroactively. It's done all the time. The important thing is that we're making progress. Another week and we'll be ready for finishes. The full realization of what they'd done, what they were still planning to do, hit me like a physical blow. My home, my sanctuary, my biggest investment, was being destroyed by my well-meaning but completely unauthorized sister and her boyfriend of a few months. Get out, I said quietly. What? Amber's smile finally fell. Get out of my house. Both of you. Right now. Jess, come on. I know it looks messy right now, but... Messy? My voice rose to a shout. Amber, you've destroyed my house. Without permission. Do you have any idea what this is going to cost to fix? What it's going to do to my property value? How am I even supposed to live here now? Ryan stepped forward, hands raised placatingly. Jessica, I understand you're upset, but we really do know what we're doing. If you'll just let us finish. No. No more. Both of you, out. Now. Take your tools and go. Amber's expression crumpled, her eyes filling with tears. This was supposed to be a good thing. I was trying to help you. I didn't ask for your help, I said, my voice breaking. I asked you to water my plants. 10 minutes later, after a tense gathering of tools and materials, they were gone. I locked the door behind them and sank down onto a drop cloth-covered stair, surrounded by the ruins of my once beautiful home, and did something I hadn't done in years, I sobbed. Night fell, and I remained sitting in my destroyed living room, too overwhelmed to move. The silence of the house, so recently filled with power tools and my sister's laughter, was oppressive. Dust motes danced in the beam of the single remaining light fixture, settling on surfaces that had been pristine just 2 weeks ago. Around midnight, I finally roused myself enough to take stock of the situation. I needed professional help, not the psychological kind, though that might come later. I needed someone who could tell me exactly how bad the damage was from a construction standpoint. I called Dylan, a college friend who'd gone into general contracting and had helped me with small projects around the house before. Despite the hour, he answered on the third ring. Jess? Everything okay? No, I admitted, my voice hoarse from crying. I need your help. Can you come by tomorrow morning? It's an emergency. To his credit, Dylan didn't ask questions. I'll be there at 8. I spent that night on my couch, unable to face my bedroom, terrified of what renovations might have begun there that I hadn't yet discovered. Dylan arrived promptly at 8, coffee in hand. I watched his expression shift from concern to shock as I led him through the house. Jesus, Jess. What happened here? I explained about Amber and Ryan, watching as Dylan's professional eye assessed each room, each partial demolition, each exposed wire and pipe. Well, he said finally, setting down his coffee on what remained of my kitchen counter, the good news is that structurally, the house is still sound. They haven't taken down any load-bearing walls. And the bad news? A lot of what they've done isn't up to code. That electrical work is dangerous, they've mixed up some of the circuits. The plumbing disconnections in the bathroom weren't done properly, you're lucky you don't have a flood. And from what you've told me about the history of the house, I'm almost certain there's asbestos in some of these walls they've opened up, which is a whole other level of problem. I sank into a folding chair that Amber and Ryan had apparently been using as makeshift furniture. How much is this going to cost me to fix? Dylan rubbed the back of his neck. To put it back exactly the way it was? Probably 40 to 50,000. To finish what they started in a way that's safe and up to code? Maybe 30,000 if we're careful with materials. $50,000. Money I didn't have. I'd sunk everything into the down payment and the period-appropriate restorations. I'll need to think about it, I said weakly. After Dylan left, promising to send me names of trusted subcontractors, I wandered through the wreckage again. In what used to be my dining room, I found a notebook I recognized as Amber's, filled with sketches and design plans. Flipping through it, I was struck by the detail. She'd created mood boards for each room, with color schemes and furniture layouts. She'd researched appropriate styles for craftsman homes and found ways to modernize without completely destroying the character. Some of the ideas were actually good. In one sketch, she'd designed a kitchen that maintained the vintage feel while adding modern conveniences, a farmhouse sink, a clever island that could be moved when needed, open shelving for everyday items but traditional cabinets for storage. It was thoughtful, beautiful even. I closed the notebook, unexpectedly conflicted. The anger was still there, but now mixed with something else, a grudging appreciation for my sister's vision, if not her methods. My phone began buzzing with text notifications. Word had spread through the family grapevine. From Mom, Amber just called me crying. What's going on? She was trying to do something nice for you. From Dad, heard about the house situation. Do you need a loan? Call me. From Amber, I'm so sorry, Jess. I really thought you'd love it when it was done. Please talk to me. I silenced my phone and continued exploring. In the partially demolished guest room, I found a box of childhood photos that had been stored in the closet, now moved to make way for what appeared to be a planned built-in dresser. The top photo showed Amber and me as kids, proudly standing in front of our shared bedroom. Amber, aged 10, had decided our room needed a makeover and had used our allowance money to buy poster paint. She'd created a mural on one wall while I was at a friend's sleepover. I remembered coming home to find our white walls covered in a childish but heartfelt scene of flowers and butterflies. I'd been furious then too. But our mother had mediated, helping me see that while Amber shouldn't have acted without permission, her heart had been in the right place. We'd ended up finishing the mural together, and it had remained there until we moved out after high school. 20 years later, and we were replaying the same dynamic. Except this time, the stakes were much higher than poster paint on bedroom walls. That night, I stayed with my friend Rachel, unable to face sleeping in a construction zone. She meant well, Rachel said as she made up her couch for me. Amber's always been impulsive, but never malicious. Meaning well doesn't fix my house, I replied, but without the heat from earlier. The exhaustion was setting in. No, it doesn't, Rachel agreed. But it might be worth remembering that relationships are harder to renovate than houses. I knew she was right, but I wasn't ready to forgive yet. That night, as I tossed and turned on Rachel's couch, I couldn't stop thinking about the parallel tracks Amber and I had always been on, me creating stability through control, her creating joy through spontaneity. For the first time, I wondered if my rigid planning was as much a character flaw as her impulsivity. The next morning, I called my boss and explained the situation in the vaguest terms possible: family emergency, house issues, and requested 2 weeks of emergency leave. Margaret, usually a stickler for advance notice, was surprisingly understanding. Take the time you need, she said. You just landed us the Seattle account. You've earned a break. With that taken care of, I dove into the process of fixing my house. I met with 3 different contractors, all recommended by Dylan. Each gave me similar assessments: the work was extensive, would take at least a month to repair, and would cost more than I could comfortably afford. None of them seemed particularly enthusiastic about undoing another contractor's work, even bad work. "Look," said the third contractor, a no-nonsense woman named Vicky, "you can either try to put it back exactly the way it was, which will cost a fortune, or you can work with what's been started and make it right." Personally, I'd recommend the latter. Some of these old systems needed updating anyway. I called my insurance company next, only to confirm what I'd feared: unauthorized renovations weren't covered under my homeowner's policy. This was coming out of pocket. Throughout this process, Amber continued to call and text. I ignored every attempt at contact. Part of me knew I'd have to talk to her eventually, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. Not until I had a plan. For days after the discovery, I found myself sitting in my gutted living room surrounded by contractor estimates, design magazines, and Amber's notebook, which I'd been studying despite myself. My phone buzzed with another call from her. I declined it, but a minute later, a voicemail notification appeared. With a sigh, I played it. "Jess, it's me again. I know you're still furious, and you have every right to be. What I did was wrong, I see that now. I was so focused on creating this perfect surprise that I didn't think about how violating it would feel for you. I'm not asking for forgiveness yet. I want to help fix this. Ryan and I have been talking, and we have some ideas for how to make it right. Not by continuing the renovation, I promise I've learned that lesson, but by helping repair the damage we caused. Please call me back. I love you." I set the phone down, conflicted. As I did, my gaze fell on a section of demolished wall where the plaster had been removed, revealing the lathe underneath. Something colorful was visible between the wooden slats. Curious, I moved closer. Wedged between the lathe and the exterior wall was a child's drawing, faded with age. I carefully extracted it. It was a crayon drawing of two girls holding hands beside what appeared to be a house. Jessica and Amber's home was written across the top in childish handwriting that I recognized as my sister's. I remembered this drawing. Amber had made it after our parents announced their divorce, when we learned we'd be moving from our childhood home to an apartment. She'd hidden copies of it throughout our old house, in drawers, behind the refrigerator, between books, saying that this way, part of us would always remain there, no matter who lived in it next. I hadn't known she'd hidden one in the walls. Finding this relic of our shared past shifted something in me. The anger didn't disappear, but it softened around the edges. I started looking through the debris with new eyes, not just seeing destruction but also the possibility of something new. That evening, I received a call from Dylan. "I've been thinking about your situation," he said without preamble. "What if we didn't completely undo everything your sister started?" "What do you mean?" "Well, I looked over her design book when I was there. Some of her ideas are actually solid. That kitchen layout, for instance, it would give you more counter space while keeping the vintage feel. And opening up that archway between the living and dining rooms? It lets in a ton more natural light. You're suggesting I finish what they started? With modifications. Professional ones. Up to code. Maybe there's a middle path here, between going back to exactly what you had and continuing with their full vision." I glanced down at Amber's childhood drawing, still in my hand. "Let me think about it," I said. Over the next few days, I did just that. I spent hours going through Amber's notebook more carefully, seeing things I'd missed in my initial fury. She'd actually put a lot of thought into preserving the character of the house. She'd researched appropriate materials for the era. She'd even found a source for reclaimed wood that matched my floors, anticipating the need to repair sections. Her execution had been terrible, but her vision? It wasn't half bad. On day 6 of the renovation crisis, I was sorting through a pile of mail that had accumulated when I noticed a charge on my credit card statement that I didn't recognize, a purchase from a high-end fixture store for over $3,000, dated 2 days after I'd left for Seattle. The softening I'd been feeling toward Amber hardened instantly. She hadn't just invaded my space and destroyed my house, she'd used my credit card to do it. I drove to Amber's apartment in a fury, the credit card statement clutched in my hand. The rational part of my brain knew I should cool down before confrontation, but the rational part wasn't in control anymore. I pounded on her door until Ryan opened it, looking surprised and wary. "Where's my sister?" I demanded, pushing past him into the apartment. Amber emerged from the bedroom, her face lighting up when she saw me, then falling as she registered my expression. "You used my credit card?" I held up the statement. "Seriously, Amber?" Her face paled. "I can explain." "Please do. Explain how using my credit card without permission isn't theft." Ryan moved to stand beside her. "Hey, that's a bit harsh. She was buying things for your house. With money that wasn't hers." I turned back to Amber. "I've been ignoring your calls because I needed time to process what you did to my house. I was actually starting to come around, to see that maybe there was some merit to your ideas if not your methods. And then I find this." Amber sank onto her couch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. "I'm sorry. I didn't. I wasn't thinking clearly." "Clearly," I echoed sarcastically. "You never do you? You just act on impulse and let others clean up your messes." "That's not fair," Ryan interjected. "Amber put all her savings into your renovation." "I didn't ask her to." "No, you just constantly talk about how you want to change things but never do it," Amber said quietly. "You plan everything to death, Jess. Pinterest boards and design books and contractor consultations that never go anywhere." I thought I could help you get past the planning stage. By committing credit card fraud?" Amber looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I lost my job 3 months ago. The show wasn't renewed. I've been freelancing, but it barely covers rent. I used all my savings on materials for your house. I was going to pay you back for the fixtures as soon as I got my next gig. This stopped me short." "You lost your job 3 months ago? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew what you'd say. That I should have been more careful, should have saved more, should have had a backup plan. I'm 30 years old, Jessica. I'm tired of always being the screw-up little sister who needs bailing out. So instead you decided to commit felony credit card fraud and destroy my house?" "I was trying to prove I could do something valuable," Amber shouted, standing up. "That my skills are worth something. That I could create something beautiful for someone I love." Was it impulsive? Yes. Was it wrong? Obviously. But it came from a place of love, which is more than I can say for your constant judgment. Ryan put his arm around her shoulders. Amber spent hours researching craftsman restorations. She called me in because I worked on 3 craftsman renovations on the show. We weren't just randomly smashing things. "You still had no right," I insisted, but my anger was beginning to deflate in the face of Amber's distress. "No, we didn't," Amber admitted. "And I'm sorry. Truly. But Jess, sometimes I feel like nothing I do will ever be good enough for you. You've got your perfect career, your perfect house, your perfect life, all mapped out. And I'm just a chaos element you have to manage." Her words hit uncomfortably close to home. Had I really been so controlling? So dismissive of her talents? "That perfect life you think I have?" I said, my voice breaking. "It's exhausting. Do you think I enjoy working 70-hour weeks? Having no social life? Postponing renovations I want because there's never enough time? I envy your freedom, Amber. Your ability to just do things, instead of overthinking them to death." The admission hung in the air between us. In all our years of sisterhood, I'd never confessed to envying anything about her life. The confrontation might have ended there, in a moment of mutual understanding, if my phone hadn't rung. It was our mother. "Jessica? Are you with your sister? You two need to work this out." Amber was only trying to help. "Mom, now's not a good time. Don't you think you're overreacting a bit? When you were kids and she painted your room. This isn't about childhood bedroom walls. I exploded. She destroyed my house. Used my credit card. This isn't something you can mediate over cookies and milk. The line went quiet. Then, well, I think you're being ungrateful. Your sister was trying to do something nice for you. I hung up, too angry to continue the conversation. When I looked up, Amber was watching me with a mixture of guilt and vindication. See, she said. Always on my side. Because you play the victim. The accusation burst out of me, carrying years of resentment. Poor impulsive Amber, she means well. Meanwhile, I'm expected to just absorb it. Clean it up. Pay for it. Because I'm the responsible one. You think I don't know that's how everyone sees us? Amber fired back. Perfect Jessica and her screw-up sister? You think I like being the family charity case? Then stop acting like one. Grow up, Amber. Take responsibility for once in your life. I've been trying to build a career doing what I love. Not everyone wants a corporate job with benefits and a 401k. Some of us want passion and creativity in our lives. And some of us want a house that isn't destroyed by our sister's passion and creativity. We were both shouting now, unleashing decades of pent-up resentment. Ryan backed away, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding in his girlfriend's living room. You know what? I'm done, I said finally, my voice raw. I'm calling my credit card company to report fraud. I'm getting estimates to fix my house, my way. And I'm done being your safety net. Amber's face went white. You wouldn't. Watch me. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. In my car, I sat shaking, wondering if I'd just permanently fractured my relationship with my only sister. Part of me wanted to go back, to apologize, to find middle ground. But the larger part, the wounded, violated part, drove away. That night, alone in a hotel room I couldn't really afford, I researched identity theft laws. My finger hovered over the call button next to my bank's fraud department number. In the end, I couldn't do it. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to potentially saddle my sister with a criminal record. Instead, I called my father and asked for a loan. The next morning, I returned to my house armed with coffee and determination. I'd decided to take Vicky the contractor's advice, work with what had been started rather than trying to restore everything to its original state. It would be more cost-effective, and honestly, some of the changes weren't terrible once I got past the shock and violation. I was examining the partially demolished kitchen when I heard a knock at the front door. Thinking it was Vicky arriving for our scheduled meeting, I called out, "It's open." Instead, Dylan walked in, toolbox in hand. Thought you could use some help securing the place. You've got exposed wiring that needs to be made safe until the real work starts. Thanks, I said, genuinely touched by his thoughtfulness. We worked in companionable silence for a while, him capping wires and me clearing debris. As he worked on a section of exposed wall in the living room, he suddenly paused. There's something in here, he said, carefully extracting what looked like a piece of paper from behind the lathe. He handed it to me. It was another of Amber's childhood drawings. This one showed two girls in what appeared to be princess dresses, standing on top of a castle. Jessica and Amber rule the world was scrawled across the bottom. I sat down heavily on a nearby step stool. She hid these all over our childhood home when we moved after the divorce. I had no idea she did the same thing here. Dylan continued working on the wiring but glanced over at me. You know, speaking strictly from a construction perspective, some of these changes have potential. That kitchen layout your sister designed is actually smart. Opens up the flow without destroying the character. I looked down at the drawing again. I know. I've been looking at her design book. She's talented. She should have asked. No argument there, Dylan agreed. Permission before demolition is generally a good rule of thumb. As he worked his way around the room, he discovered two more drawings hidden in the walls. Each featured Amber and me together, at the beach, flying in a plane, standing on a mountain. In each one, we were together. A team. Your sister really loves you, Dylan observed quietly. She has a funny way of showing it, I replied, but there was no heat in my words. After Dylan left, I sat down with Amber's design notebook again. This time, I really looked at it. She'd noticed things about my house that I hadn't, how the morning light hit the kitchen, how the upstairs hallway was always dark, how the back porch had potential to be an outdoor dining space. She'd addressed each issue with thoughtful, creative solutions that respected the house's character. And she'd done it all because she thought it would make me happy. I was still angry about the methods, still hurt by the violation of my space and my credit card. But the wall of fury had cracked. I texted Amber, "Coffee tomorrow?" "Just to talk." "The Blue Cup at 10 a.m. Her reply came seconds later, "I'll be there." The Blue Cup was neutral territory, a coffee shop equidistant from both our places. I arrived early, claiming a corner table and ordering a latte to settle my nerves. Amber arrived precisely at 10, looking as anxious as I felt. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thanks for coming." An awkward silence fell between us, neither sure how to begin. "I'm sorry," we both said simultaneously, then gave matching startled laughs. "You first," I said. Amber took a deep breath. "I'm truly sorry, Jess. What I did was inexcusable. I violated your space, your trust, and your finances. I got so caught up in this vision of surprising you with your dream renovation that I completely lost sight of how wrong it was to do it without your permission. And using your credit card, I have no excuse for that. I panicked when we ran out of money, and instead of admitting failure, I made an awful decision. I've already called the credit card company and arranged to pay it off myself." I blinked, surprised. "You did?" She nodded. "I got a job. 2, actually. Waitressing mornings and designing websites at night. It's not ideal, but it'll cover the charges and start a fund to help repair your house." The anger I'd been nursing fell away entirely. "I found your drawings in the walls." Her eyes widened. "You did?" "Dylan and I discovered them while securing the wiring. You know, the ones like you used to hide in our old house." A small smile played at her lips. "I'd forgotten about those. When I was removing the first section of wall and found a perfect hiding spot, it just brought back memories." It was impulsive. "Like the rest of the renovation," I said, but without judgment. "Like the rest of the renovation," she agreed. "Jess, I know I messed up, massively, but I really was trying to do something meaningful for you. You're always taking care of everyone else. I wanted someone to take care of you for a change." "By destroying my house?" The words came out more gently than before, almost teasing. "By creating something beautiful for you. A space that would make you happy when you came home from those 70-hour work weeks." She pulled a folder from her bag. "I brought something. A peace offering of sorts." Inside were printouts of her designs, now modified. "I consulted with a licensed contractor friend of mine, not Ryan," she added hastily. "These are revisions that would work with what's been done but bring everything up to code. They're just suggestions. You can throw them away if you want." I looked through the papers. The designs were impressive, thoughtful compromises between modern amenities and historic charm. She'd even included a budget breakdown and timeline. "These are good, Amber. Really good." Her face lit up with cautious hope. "Really?" "Yes. I've been studying your notebook. You saw things about my house that I never did, problems and possibilities. Your execution was terrible, but your vision, it has merit." "High praise from Jessica Mitchell," she said with a small smile. I set the designs down. "I have a proposal. We finish the renovation, together. With professional help," I added quickly. "I've already got quotes from legitimate contractors. But we use some of your designs as the foundation. You contribute with design work and sweat equity to help offset the costs, but all major decisions are ultimately mine. And no more surprises. You mean it? On one condition. We talk, really talk, about this pattern we're in. You, impulsively trying to fix things. Me, rigidly controlling everything. It's not healthy for either of us. Amber nodded solemnly. That's fair. I've actually started seeing someone. A therapist, she clarified. After our fight. She's helped me see some things about my need for grand gestures and validation. That's really mature of you, I said, genuinely impressed. Well, destroying your sister's house tends to force some self-reflection. Her smile turned rueful. What about Ryan? I know you're not his biggest fan right now, but he does feel terrible. If he wants to help with the proper renovation, under professional supervision, I won't object. But Amber, I need you to understand something. What hurt most wasn't the physical changes to the house. It was that you didn't respect my boundaries. My home is the one place in my life where I have complete control, where everything is exactly as I want it. You took that from me. I know, she said quietly. And I'm so sorry. I won't ever do anything like this again, I promise. I believed her. For perhaps the first time in our adult lives, I felt like we were seeing each other clearly, not as the roles we'd always played in our family drama, but as the complicated, flawed people we'd become. Our grandmother used to say that sisters are different flowers from the same garden, I said. I think maybe we've both been trying to grow in ways that don't come naturally to us. Amber reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm willing to learn if you are. 3 months later, I stood in my newly completed kitchen, running my hand over the quartz countertop that Amber had insisted would be more practical than the period tile I'd initially restored. She was right, it was beautiful, durable, and somehow managed to look appropriate for the age of the house while being thoroughly modern. The renovation had taken longer than expected and gone over budget, as renovations always do. But the result was undeniably stunning. My house felt like mine again, but better, more functional, more beautiful, with thoughtful details I never would have considered on my own. Amber and I had worked side by side throughout the process, with professional supervision. We'd argued, compromised, and occasionally even agreed. Through it all, we'd talked, really talked, about our relationship, our childhood, and the patterns we'd fallen into. I'd learned to loosen my grip on control a bit, she'd learned to channel her creativity within appropriate boundaries. She'd kept her promise about paying back the credit card charges, sending me monthly payments from her new jobs. She'd even enrolled in formal interior design courses, channeling her natural talent into legitimate credentials. Earth to Jessica, Amber waved a hand in front of my face, breaking my reverie. She was setting the dining room table for our first family dinner in the renovated house. Where'd you go just now? Just thinking about how far we've come. The house and us. She smiled, placing the final wineglass on the table. From demolition to dinner party. Who would have thought? Certainly not me, when I walked in that day and found you destroying my living room. We both laughed, the memory now softened by time and resolution. Our parents arrived first, separately, as they had for years, but civil. Dad whistled appreciatively as I showed him around. You girls did good, he said, nodding with approval at the coffered ceiling Amber had designed for the dining room. Worth every penny of that loan, Jess. Mom couldn't resist pointing out that she'd always known Amber had an eye for design, but even that didn't irritate me as it once would have. We had found a new equilibrium, one that allowed us all to be who we were without the old resentments. Ryan arrived with a housewarming gift, a custom mailbox he'd crafted from reclaimed wood that matched the house. I accepted it with genuine thanks. Over the course of the renovation, I'd come to appreciate his skills, if not his initial judgment in going along with Amber's scheme. As we gathered around the dining table, extended now that the wall between the dining room and sunroom had been removed, just as Amber had envisioned, I looked at my sister across a spread of food we'd prepared together. I'd like to make a toast, I said, raising my glass. To unexpected renovations, of houses and relationships. Amber's eyes glistened as she raised her glass in return. To sisters who can forgive even the unforgivable. And to boundaries, I added with a wink, which we now all respect. Later, after everyone had left and Amber was helping me load the dishwasher, another modern convenience I'd finally conceded to, she paused, leaning against the new island. You know what I've realized? We were both trying so hard to be someone we're not. Me trying to be the responsible one for once, you trying to be spontaneous with your renovation plans. Maybe we just need to be who we are, but with a little more balance. And a lot more communication, I added, closing the dishwasher. We moved to the new back porch, settling into the comfortable chairs that now created an outdoor living space. The autumn air was crisp, but the outdoor heater, another of Amber's practical suggestions, kept us warm. I've been thinking about what you said that day at the Blue Cup, Amber said, looking up at the stars. About how your house was the one place where you had complete control. I think that's why I focused on it for my grand gesture. I thought if I could make your sanctuary even better, you'd see that sometimes giving up a little control leads to good things. A lesson better taught with words than demolition, I replied drily. Granted. But was I wrong? I considered the question honestly. No. This renovation has taught me that perfect plans aren't always the best ones. Sometimes you need to adapt, to let go, to trust the process. And other people. And I've learned that creativity needs structure to truly shine, Amber said. That boundaries aren't limitations but foundations. We sat in companionable silence, looking out at the yard that was next on our renovation list. We'd already started sketching plans, together this time. Do you remember that drawing I found in the wall? Jessica and Amber rule the world? I asked suddenly. Of course. I drew dozens of those after Mom and Dad told us about the divorce. I was convinced if we stuck together, nothing could hurt us. You weren't entirely wrong. I reached over and squeezed her hand. We're stronger together than apart. We just needed to figure out how to be together without driving each other crazy. Or destroying each other's houses, Amber added with a grin. As we laughed under the stars, I realized that while the unauthorized renovation had been a violation, it had also been a catalyst. It had forced us to confront issues we'd been dancing around for decades. Sometimes you need to have your foundations shaken to build something stronger. My house was no longer just my achievement but a symbol of healing and growth. It carried both our fingerprints now, a physical manifestation of our complicated but loving relationship. The perfect metaphor for family itself, always a work in progress, never quite finished, but worth every moment of effort. Have you ever had a family member cross a boundary that led to an unexpected positive change in your relationship? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need a reminder that even our most challenging family relationships can be renovated with patience, honest communication, and a willingness to see beyond old patterns. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most beautiful transformations come from the messiest demolitions.